Welcome, everybody, back to another BOLDcast One Piece podcast review discussion thing. I'm Carson.
I'm Lindsay.
And this is our discussion of the Alabasta Saga, spanning from around episode 61 to episode 130, right before the big filler arc, containing Logue Town. No, Logue Town was before. Containing Laboon, containing Whiskey Peak, Drum Island, and Little Garden, and Alabasta, all together.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy to think about the fact that the arc started back then, and even that Vivi was introduced right at the start with a Laboon.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I feel like it just so quickly turned into something so much larger and so different that it doesn't feel disconnected, but it just seems so far away, you know?
Yeah, it is a real monster, because the East Blue only was like 50 something. It was 55 episodes, something like that, a little bit more than that, something around there. Yeah, and then this one was like 70 or so, and we skipped a couple filler episodes, but there wasn't that many. I kind of wish we didn't, honestly. There is,
Yeah.
but I know, you know, people just want us to get to the good stuff, and this series is already so long. I'm not that crazy about it. Like, I'm not like, oh man, they made us skip the episodes. It was for the best, I think. But you know, maybe
we did accidentally watch like a couple of them.
Yeah, but the ones
we
that's
did
why
accidentally watch were good.
That's why I was thinking about it, is because we watched the one where Zoro, Luffy, and Chopper were just bumming around, like got separated or whatever, and then they found the poneglyph that apparently is just a filler and doesn't mean anything. And it was like foreshadowing for that near the end of the arc, and also just sort of foreshadowing a lot of like Chopper's sort of development in the arc. Like, if you think about it, like his whole fight with Usopp was kind of colored by that conversation, and in a way that I think was kind of meaningful, and not like you know, and oftentimes in fillers, it's like oftentimes in fillers, conversations like that and like referring to conversations in fillers are like a justification for the filler. Like, we have all this filler because we need to fill time for the manga or for the production or some reason, some out of universe reason why there needs to be like a bunch of random characters, a bunch of different plot lines and stuff like that. But like, so then they call back to it with, you know, one line in the middle of something that's actually canon, and as if to say like, oh, that filler thing actually does exist in this, like, you know, version, and it is present in the character's mind, that whole conversation. But this doesn't feel like that. If really felt like if I had no filler guide, if I was watching this for the first time, then, and I had no idea, I would think that was very you know, it really molded it was like substantial for the character, for multiple characters in the arc.
They didn't really introduce any other people. They just sort of had the characters hanging out
for that one.
And it's so interesting to find out afterwards that was filler, because when we watched that episode, it was like, whoa, like, I'm really enjoying this. This is like a different vibe, and I like it. And then later on throughout the arc, I kept like in my mind being like, oh, this makes sense with that one episode, and then being like, but it was filler, so I can't like base my predictions off of this filler episode, even though it is somehow relevant to like every episode after it in the rest of the arc.
And I think a lot of people were saying that they were worried that we were going to like get confused because of that, because they just want us to stay on the right track and not like you know, lose the plot or anything. But you know, I think anyway, that was a good episode, as were many episodes in this whole saga. Oh, Hustler asks about what we were just talking about. I'll maybe edit this in. Hustler asks, how do you feel about the world building so far from Syrup Village, Logue Town, Drum Island, Alabasta? Which island setting has been your favorite? If you lived in One Piece, where would you choose to live?
I don't even know where I would choose to live. They all seem kind of dangerous.
Where would I choose to live? I mean, like, what fucking one of the villages that didn't really see a pirate, like Kaya's village.
Yeah, there was a, you know, there was some pirates that one time, but it didn't seem like a pirate hotspot.
And it didn't. They prevented it from spilling in. Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. I mean, everywhere can be a pirate hotspot. Yeah, I don't even know, because there's like, we don't even know if the marine presence is a good or bad thing, because we had Captain Morgan, who was just basically a pirate. I don't know. I guess nobody asked this, but like, and we'll get to questions in a second. We got questions from our patrons, but I think Alabasta's like of the places we visited is probably the best art part of the arc, most likely. Like, but like from Drum Island, Little Garden, and Whiskey Peak, which do you like the best? However you want, whether it's the story or whether it's the location.
I feel like it's so hard to even compare all of them because, like, I love Drum Island, but mostly just because of Chopper's backstory. If I take my feelings about how much I love Chopper out of the equation, to me it like doesn't even come close to Alabasta because like that was so good. Whiskey Peak was a lot shorter as well, and then if you throw Little Garden in there or whatever, it's like that was like so good, but like just like its own very self-contained little kind of side story, like not a side story in that it doesn't matter, just like when like the whole thing is like the journey of getting Vivi back to Alabasta and saving Alabasta. Everything else seems like small in comparison. Everything else just seems like a stepping stone to them getting to Alabasta. But at the time, before we got there, it's like it just kept getting better and better. You know what I mean? Like every time we went to somewhere new, it was like, whoa, this is even cooler than the last place. And I feel like I like that. I don't know.
It seems like I actually kind of agree. And there's a lot of things I like about each individual one, and a lot of things that I kind of don't like about each individual part. And it's all different like categories of things. Like Whiskey Peak was super clumsy because it was trying to set up like as a story arc. It was very clumsy because it was trying to set up Alabasta and trying to get the ball moving on that early so that we could, when we got to Alabasta, it felt like substantial and set up and stuff like that. So like we talked a lot about like Vivi being, shoehorned in and all that type of shit, and like all the kind of weirdness with like the two Baroque Works agents and all the Baroque Works people, and Ingram switching between like nice guy who's actually betraying them to actual nice guy to dying, like to not dying, et cetera, et cetera. Like there's a lot of it that was like very clumsy because it needed to set up Alabasta. But then like the whole setting and the whole idea of that being the first island that they really get to, and it being like very like that they get betrayed, and it's like this sort of, they get invited in, and then
there's like it looks like a cactus, and then
yeah,
there's like
that
graves
moment
and stuff.
specifically it seems like that was Oda's like when you look at something, sometimes if you look at not just One Piece, but it's fun to like look at stuff and be like, oh, that like image, you can kind of imagine that like that image of the cactus being covered in all the gravestones, that might have been like the sort of nugget that sprouted out the rest of the stuff around this arc in it, because it's a really powerful image, and that's like that will stick in my head for like a long time because it's such like a cool reveal, and it's such an interesting like reversal moment, and it really plays into like what the beginning of the arc was kind of setting up with that whole part of the story. So I really like that, but then obviously like I said, a lot of it was kind of clumsy. But then we get to Little Garden, and it was like the concept of these two like ancient warriors fighting, and then kind of the sad backstory of how they've been fighting so long that they kind of forgot. And there's this, and we have the like little girl and like the farmers that were there before, and they've been there for so long that like people have lived and died and like gone away and stuff like that, but they're still there, they don't even remember. But then it gets kind of dumb when the actual fighting starts, like exploring the island, learning about the dinosaurs, learning about the giants, talking to them, hanging out with them.
Sanji and Zoro like reflecting the Elbaf warriors.
Yes.
They're like them having like a rivalry of like catching these things, and then it is revealed at the end that that's exactly what started this whole like feud in the first place. But I will say, like, and I think the common thread here, because when you go to Drum Island, the weak part is obviously Wapol and like all of those guys. So it's like the villains of this arc up until Crocodile and Nico Robin are kind of bad. Like when I think about each island, I'm like, what made this not like, what was the thing that was like the least enjoyable about each part?
It's the fights.
And
not necessarily the fights, because like Luffy fighting, like getting swallowed by the brontosaurus and then the head getting chopped off him, just falling out or whatever, like the neck like diced
and
up.
the actual fight between the Elbaf warriors was really good. I think not necessarily the fights, just the
once we get into the anime
villains that were hyped up to a certain level but just couldn't actually live up to it, and were just kind of very cringe and kind of just
that's the problem with long running like stories, is like the characters are gonna have plot armor, like it's kind of inescapable, and it's unfortunate.
And we also just had like we had like several different variations on like why each of the Baroque Works people was bad. Like you had like the bomb guy and the girl that could control her weight, and it's like it seems like it's kind of a cool thing, but then it's kind of just like
it
whatever.
Can't be used to its full potential because of the plot armor.
They can't actually be blowing people up effectively.
Yeah.
And then we have people like Mr. 3, who's just kind of disgusting and weird, and like makes this giant spinning candle contraption pumpkin thing, and it's just like all right, like you're just like, okay, like, this guy's just a weirdo. And then you have Miss Golden Week,
who's awesome,
and I really liked her like personality. But
I wish you were wearing your hat.
That would have been good. But her actual ability was just to stall people. So then it that's not an interesting.
And Mr. 3's was as well. It was so
yeah, it's like slow. So the thing here, and like with Wapol as well, it's just like he was just so terrible. Like he wasn't Baroque Works, but he was just terrible and annoying.
Yeah.
And like you don't take him seriously, but he's just like the worst guy of all time.
He's very greedy. That was his whole thing. Gluttonous, greedy. He would eat all the time, and he was all about everybody paying tribute at the cost of their lives and limbs and stuff like that, like all the medical stuff going on there. And and then Drum Kingdom, what I liked about it was sort of the general concept of the island and the story of Chopper, story of Doctorine, story of Hiruluk and stuff like that, which I wasn't expecting to like. Hiruluk to me seemed, when Hiruluk was introduced, he seemed to me to be a very like not interesting like he seemed to be like a very goofy mad scientist type guy who wouldn't really have much going for him from a story perspective. But I'm saying before everyone jumps on me for saying that, I ended up obviously really liking and really buying into the development and where it went. But I liked the very Christmas vibe. Obviously, like there's like Grinch stuff. There's a Christmas Carol type vibes and stuff like that, and like a bunch of other like fables, and just like the creepiness of Chopper being a reindeer with human abilities and stuff like that, and like going back to his family and the way they would all look at him and stuff like that, the way that he would look, and I don't know, just there's so many little things in that arc. But then obviously it just seems like the story, it's like I really love Oda's vision and everything is really about, and then it feels like we had to like kind of pause sometimes to like deal with the villain. Be like, well, okay, there's really cool world building, there's really cool characters. I love these new, like the Elbaf warriors, like Chopper, everybody, and Dalton, everybody, and there's so much to learn about. Okay, let's pause 1 second, let's go over and let's kick Wapol's ass, let's like get rid of Mr. 3, let's do this or do that. And but it's not that big of a deal at the end of the day, because we still walk away and you still remember all those good moments. And then you get to Alabasta, and Alabasta to me is like by far, it's like at least twice as good as any good moment in One Piece so far, like overall. And it's not perfect, but it's like Alabasta, we talked a lot about, and maybe there's a question I could call out, but I'll just kind of go through it. Like we talked a lot about throughout the whole series of One Piece, and we've got a lot of criticism for not like giving the series enough credit, when really what we're doing is like approaching it without with as little expectations as we can, and trying to take it for what it's worth. Not like, maybe we're not giving enough credit because it has this big legacy, this One Piece, and Oda as a storyteller is so respected and the series is so beloved. And because we're approaching it without that like reverence, a lot of people like criticize us for not, giving the series its due. But Alabasta, like, it to me is the proof that I needed to really expect, like, not good things as if I didn't expect good things before, but to have like, okay, this is what the series is capable of. The series can take risks. Maybe like, Pell surviving is kind of a shot in the foot for that, but like not that much, because I could just imagine Pell's still dead, and I will.
He's dead to me.
He's dead to me. He's dead to me out of respect for his character. But this arc like proved to me, like it connected so much of what had been built up for the whole series before, and it gave me, with that, like, take a step back, don't worry about like Goda or all the craziness, all the deification that people have on the series. We're not taking that in. We're just trying to take the series for what it is. With that perspective, I feel like Alabasta really solidified that like the series can go somewhere, and I can be, give it a little bit more faith for sure that it will go somewhere. Again, it wasn't perfect, but like it like I said, it's easily at least twice as good.
The evolution, like just in the writing and in the story crafting that has gone on, and it's like every time it just gets better. I feel like, and to have such a dramatic and like satisfying climax and end to this journey, and to have it feel like we lost something, like a lot of bad stuff happened, but there's still hope and we're still moving on in the future. I feel like it was very impactful, like the whole thing, and I don't know, I feel like it was just a different vibe at the end of this than it has been at the vibe of like any even small arc or anything, like I feel like the first real taste of that I thought of like, wow, this is like great writing, it was in Chopper's story. And then seeing like that, because Chopper's story was so amazing. It was like a 3 episodes for the most part little package of like, wow, this is so amazing, I love this story. And then to see like that kind of level of like super tight writing and plot twists and character decisions and character development, and you know what I mean, like all of that, I feel like there was a lot like stuff on that level, but on a larger scale and over a larger period of episodes during when we got to Alabasta and everything really started kicking off, And I feel like that's what I'm talking about when it's like, now I feel like I am starting to see when people are like, oh, you don't understand, Oda is like the best ever, oh, the story is on another level, you don't understand. And when if we would criticize things earlier on, or just discuss our opinions, but I think it's like, yeah, we don't understand because we don't have 1,000 episodes that we've watched, and we have utter faith in this guy because we've seen 1,000 episodes of his work. We're still like very, very early into our One Piece journey. So I feel like, my trust in him has been growing as the story has gone on. And, like now I feel like there is enough and have been so many great moments that now I'm more excited than ever to see what's to come,
Yeah.
And it makes me excited for just the different variations of arcs, because in the East Blue, it's like we just have 4 or 5 of almost like a very similar pattern happening, even though they were different. It was like, you arrive, there's a bad guy and someone that's going to join our crew, and a very similar pattern happens every time. So I just feel like now that we're in the Grand Line, and throughout this arc we've had something completely different, and we discussed a lot as well having Nico Robin join the crew at the end instead of Vivi, kind of completely like is like the final nail in like breaking that pattern of like, oh, we go here and the person that helps us and is with us joins our crew, because Vivi stays behind even though she'd been with them for a long time. And Nico Robin is just like, hey, I want to join your crew. Luffy doesn't have to convince her or anything. So I feel like to me, it's really a turning point.
Oh, from Artemis, one of the greater plot twists in this arc was Nico Robin joining the Straw Hats at the end. What are your predictions for this character moving forward in the story? What motives do you think she has? And how is her inclusion going to enhance the story of One Piece? I feel like that's a really good question.
That is a good question. I feel like we did talk about this in the final episode where we see that she joins. But I'm really, really excited because I feel like we talk a lot about the pairings or like different ways that the group can split up, and each group has their own little vibe. Like Luffy and Usopp and Chopper are just like, you know, like dancing around together and like messing around. Usopp and Nami are like scared together. Sanji and Zoro have like this little rivalry kind of going on. So I feel like it's going to be really exciting to see how Nico Robin fits in, especially since we saw just from when she comes on the ship that she already can just like wrap everyone around her finger instantly. Like she knows how to make all the guys laugh. She knows that Sanji will just be in love with her automatically. She knows that Nami loves money, so she, you know, bribes her. But I'm really most excited to see her and Zoro and how their relationship evolves, because he's still not sold on her. He immediately recognizes her as a threat, but also at just that her vibe is very different to Nami or Vivi or anyone else that is around, and she's a bit more of a mature presence. She's older than them.
I really hope we see some significant development between them and not just like little interactions here and there that show like I hope that it's not just, oh, when there's a little joking segment, she like looks over and smiles at him when everybody's joking around, and he's like kind of blushes and looks away or something like that. Like I you know, obviously whatever's going to happen is going to happen, but like I hope that if we see a pairing, we get kind of like the Usopp and Chopper fighting Mr. Four, Miss Merry Christmas, hopefully a better fight than that, but like I want them to be like given quality time to like develop their relationship and dynamic a little bit more. I'd love to see just like everybody splits off because of crazy stuff's happening and they get paired up together somehow, and they have to
learn how to trust each other. And
despite like Robin maybe having an instinct to like run away or to, you know, not really being attached or not really having a stake in everything, and Zoro being super loyal to Luffy and everybody, and not really, you know, feeling super attached, like them having to bond in order to overcome something. I'm really excited for that kind of a dynamic for sure.
And I wouldn't even mind if it was kind of like that didn't happen for a while, you know what I mean? Like they kind of like danced around each other, and like she was trying to like get him to be on board with having her there, and he's just like very resistant, and then they get put in a position where they have to. Yeah,
because that's really what I'm excited for with Robin is I'm excited to see her have to earn her place, because you know, her just like joining, everyone's like, oh, good, sweet, basically after like 5 seconds, especially after she helped orchestrate like nearly the downfall of one of their best friends' homes, and like killing thousands of people from the drought, and like helping doing all of that. Like we talked about or at least I talked about how I'll probably never forgive Mr. 2 despite him like sacrificing himself at the end to like make them a getaway, you know, because he did actively kick off the rebellion, and he wasn't just a part of the organization. He wasn't just like doing his own thing with his crew, but also like, you know, in the background helping out. He was there and kicked off and gleefully like laughed and like joked around as like people died from getting crushed from that giant boat, from getting, you know, he wanted to stop them so that the nuke could go off and kill 1 million fucking people. You know, it's so, and here's the thing, and maybe this is a greater conversation with One Piece, but like morality isn't always like the most important thing. It's about having a fun story, obviously. But for me personally, Mr. 2, because he's like a side character, he's not that super important. I'm not really excited to like get to know him and for him to like have, you know, join up with us and have fun. I don't, you know, because it's kind of an asshole move. But then when you could equally apply that to Nico Robin, because she was right-hand man of Crocodile during this whole escapade.
for years.
For years. So her there's a lot of blood on her hands, and I guess I wonder if there's going to be any examination of that, or if it's just like whatever. I hope it's not just whatever, because that would, I feel like, cheapen the sacrifice of the people and the stakes of the arc, because the stakes of Alabasta were not about whether our friends will get hurt and die. It's whether like Vivi will get hurt because her people are dying and dying brutally in a war and killing each other. Like there was a lot of tension to me because the stakes were so broad. They were it was all a bunch of other people. Every second wasted was another life lost, and they really did a good job at communicating that, and I could feel the tension and like the tragedy of it and the scope of it. It was a big deal. But if it turns out that none of that really matters because we're just friends with Nico Robin anyway, despite all of this stuff, because if we never talk about it, if it's never brought up as like, oh, Nico Robin essentially like assisted in the murder of like tens of thousands of fucking people, like a lot of people just here. We don't even know what she was doing before. This is very suspicious. So that's why I'm excited about Zoro and her's relationship, or potentially the rest of the crew. I imagine Luffy won't give a shit because he doesn't care. But the reason why I want them to get into it isn't because it's that big of a deal. Like that a bunch of people died, or I'm never gonna like Nico Robin or enjoy her being on the team. It's that or that morality needs to be like a big sticking point in the series. It's just that this whole arc was built on that being like the problem that we need to solve, and we need to do it quickly because so many people are gonna die. And then for her to join up and for us to never talk about it again, would feel kind of like oh well, whatever, all that stuff, we just want to hang out with this character. We just want this character on the team. So I hope that there's some examination of it or some exploration of it in some way. It doesn't have to be a big way. I would be excited to see
just
a little bit of that. Some acknowledgement, or like, oh, Nico Robin, you are a international terrorist. And not, again, it's not like about the law or about like morality exactly. It's just like we were on Vivi's side and really trying to help her kingdom and help her. And now this is, and now we got this person who like actively aided in the destruction of all of that.
Yeah.
So,
and I feel like with the Mr. 2 thing, I feel like Mr. 2 is almost like I don't know, like not quite a Hisoka character, but like something it's sort of similar. The vibe is very similar.
Yeah.
Like especially like Luffy's reaction to him, or just like everyone's kind of in some way. It reminds me very much of like Gon, where it's just
big
like
time. Yeah.
This person is my friend. I don't care that they disguise themselves as my other best friend's dad and like made thousands of people die because of it. Because he helped me, and that's the other thing about Mr. 2, and I think what makes him, like, I don't know, maybe there was a question about this, but like Mr. 2, I think is like definitely like probably like him and Nico Robin are like my top 2 Baroque Works
big
agents
time, yeah,
by a landslide. And it's so funny because Mr. 2, just based on his design, based on like the entire concept of him, you would think that he would be like the stupidest and like least interesting of all the Baroque Works people. But instead, he's the most compelling because he has this thing where he has a deep love for his crew. His crew are so on board with him. They love him. They do ballet together. They're like dancing around and prancing all over the place. And they have like this crazy bond. And like they're willing to sacrifice themselves just because he says those guys are my friends on that boat and we need to let them get away and sink our entire ship and die because the Marines are going to go get them, and he also has like the, when he fights Sanji, then he appreciates the, his kicks and stuff like that. And he's able to have a fun and goofy time. But he's still clearly a villain, so I feel like it's a very interesting portrayal. Yeah. Of like, yeah, like I mean, maybe in a different world where he didn't like wind up with Baroque Works or whatever he was doing, he could have been a pirate similar to Luffy of just like, oh, I'm gonna go around and do my ballet stuff. You know what I mean? It's like he's like really messed up, but comes across as a very genuine person at the same time. You know what I mean? Like he's able to make connections with people very easily.
Yeah. He's definitely a very interesting guy. And yeah, I would say that he's definitely like top tier Baroque Works agent. A lot of them were kind of just, it was very hit and miss. There were a couple that were good. There were a couple that were good in theory, but not as great in practice. There were a couple that were, that were like Mr. 2 is kind of the opposite, where he was like kind of weird in theory, but then very interesting and had a lot of impact on the story in practice. And it was very welcome to me. And yeah, it is very much like we talked a lot in Hunter x Hunter about morality being not the point, and I feel like that's definitely something here for sure. The way that it's built up, it's no matter what people have done, no matter what their past is, you take them for who you know them as, and trust in the version of that you know, and live through your own experience. All everything in the past, like all the people, all their baggage and everything like that. It's not all about that. It's about the bonds that you form with them and your life essentially. And there is something really cool about that. And what else was I going to say about that? Something, but I could see it going in an interesting direction for sure with all that. I wonder if it will be challenged at all with people, because.
Oh yeah, we did talk before about if what happens if Luffy's just like, oh, I completely trust you.
Yes.
And then the person is not trustworthy.
There's got to be a betrayal, and I think it could be Ace. I think the Ace might be that person. Lindsay just when I said Ace. Somebody asked about Ace. Hang on. Let me find the question. I'll put a question up of somebody who asked about Ace, but that was my somebody asked about like what Ace is, what part is he going to play in the story, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that might be a really interesting way to sort of challenge that whole idea of, I don't give a shit what you did in the past. You're my friend. We're friends. I will fight for you and with you because I believe in you. And I don't give a shit about what everyone else says. That's a great thing when the people that you're dealing with are trustworthy and actually, they reciprocate it, and, they understand what it means when Luffy says that. And then because they hear that from Luffy, they believe it and then feel the same way back. But if somebody Luffy thinks that he knows and thinks that he understands, leaves, comes back into his life, and is now a completely different person, but since Ace is just hanging out with Luffy and his buddies, he can kind of slip into whatever he needs to do, or not lie. It's not a lie thing, but he doesn't need to show all his cards, or he doesn't need to turn on a certain part of himself in those interactions. But maybe if we meet him again when he's back with Whitebeard, or with in the future we meet him, if we're at cross purposes, like what will Ace do? What will that do for the relationship, and how will Luffy react? I don't think Luffy's the type of person, even if it was Ace, to feel super betrayed or anything. But
yeah, I think it depends, because for me, when I think about Ace, I feel like there could definitely be a conflict between them, but I don't know necessarily I don't know if Luffy, if anything that Ace could do, Luffy would consider necessarily a betrayal. I feel like that would be a strong word. I feel like that would be a Luffy. I feel like doesn't really feel betrayed very often, if ever. You feel if someone. I don't even Mr. 2 when they were like, oh, but I thought that guy was nice. It's you know what I mean? I don't know. I feel like that is such a strong word, but I do feel like that could happen possibly with Ace, but possibly also with someone else. If I think at one point him and Ace are going to come up opposing each other, and being on opposite sides. But I think that there could be someone else but Ace is never pretending to be on Luffy's side necessarily. He said, do you want to join Whitebeard? Or Luffy's like, hey, do you want to join? He's like, no. Do you want to join with me? No. All right. Cool. See you later. You know what I mean? So it's
there is kind of an understanding that they're not,
that if they come up against you, but it's like it kind of all in good fun.
Yes.
Of like we're both on our own journeys,
the pirate
and I love you
spirit.
and respect you, but I'm doing my own thing, and if that comes against you, then
so it's hard to call it a betrayal if they have a mutual understanding, but like
that's what I was saying. Like maybe someone else, if he meets someone else that is pretending to be on his side.
Yeah, it would have to be really convincing, or they'd have to actually change, like be on Luffy's side and then change their mind, like not just like pretend to be on Luffy's side, but actually be with Luffy. Like I guess what the core of what we're saying is, somebody asked Manu C asked a lot of stuff that I could read out in a second, but the last part, as what we were talking about here, got me thinking. Like, and lastly, how has Luffy grown? Do you think Luffy has grown? Do you think Luffy has grown as a character? I don't think he has.
I honestly don't.
And that's not a hit against the character.
It seems
like he's been very consistent, and he's like the soul of the show.
It seems like it's such a hard thing. Because
I feel like if there is going to be growth, he will have growth later, and that's the kind of growth that I want to see.
Yeah, I think what's kind of interesting is like so far a lot of the growth has been through the side characters, but then we also see a lot of realistic things of like they grow, but not overnight, and they're not like cured forever. Like if Usopp takes a big stand, he's not immediately cured and will never be scared again. You know what I mean? But I feel like for Luffy, he is very true to himself, and like similar to Hunter x Hunter again, it's like this absolute kind of confidence in himself that allows him to remain mostly the same, but still be a very interesting character. He doesn't come across as just because he isn't showing a ton of growth doesn't mean that he's coming across as flat or boring.
Yeah.
Whereas in, I think, different types of shows, if characters aren't growing, it's like, that's a problem. That's a flat character. This is like not an interesting story because this isn't a realistic person. But I feel like part of Luffy's whole thing is that he is not a normal person. He's a crazy person who wants to be a pirate. He still has the same goal. He still treats people the same way. He's now seen a little bit more dark stuff, but I don't think it has like warped his outlook on the world at all.
Yeah.
He's seen people get murdered right in front of him a million times. And it affects him, but it doesn't
change him.
It doesn't make him depressed or change his sort of life philosophies.
Yeah,
you know?
I feel like that question is kind of leading because and like a lot of questions kind of are when it comes to One Piece, because again, that's one of those things where it's like they have so much more context for the rest of the series, or a lot of people, I'm not just picking on this one person, but it's a good example of like, oh, how has Luffy grown? Maybe we're missing something and we don't see the finer details. Very
subtle, and then when we see him, 1,000 episodes later, it'll be like, oh, I see. Like even at
slow
this point,
progression,
he had already started to change.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe it's something that's just very, very subtle, and I'm not really seeing. But I think for the most part, he is mostly the same.
With the point, and that's consistent with the goals of the whole story up to this point. Like the story, like the problem with a main character, like Haikyuu has a very similar character like archetype, I guess. It's not the same character. It's not like a carbon copy of somebody like Luffy or Goku or whoever. It's like Haikyuu, Hinata doesn't like goes through in the Ball Boy arc, goes through a sort of metamorphosis, but he before that arc he was one way, and then after that arc he was pretty much the same. Like he learned some stuff as far as his gameplay, but and his teamwork and stuff like that, but like his personality, his outlook, his drive, his motivation, the way he interacts with other people, it's the same. But that's not a problem, and it's not a problem in One Piece either in this case up to this point, because the series doesn't have goals of like changing the main character in the arcs that we've seen. Mm-hmm. If in the future the story is like doing what I'm kind of looking for, of like challenging Luffy's outlook, giving him obstacles that can't be solved the same way by just beating up the guy, or by promising his friends that he's going to succeed, some challenge that's going to shake him to his core and force him to reevaluate and add something to his personality or build onto it. That's what I'm very interested in. It doesn't have to happen like right now, but that's the time where I'm very interested to see. And but the fact that hasn't happened 30 episodes in, it's not a big deal because the series isn't like because Naruto does this all the time where it's like the series is sort of putting out the idea that this is a big character moment. This is a
everything
big
will change after this.
Yes,
and then it doesn't.
Then it doesn't, and it doesn't deliver. And so that you set this goal for yourself in your story that you're going to have this big character drama, this big character development, and it does deliver on sometimes. I think that like in later midway to like the last quarter of Shippuden where Naruto is like dealing with what he's going to do with Sasuke, and like he has that panic attack when he's in the snow and he's like literally like hyperventilating and because he realizes he's probably going to have to kill Sasuke. Like there's a lot of development in there that I think is substantial for the world, substantial for the decisions that Naruto makes, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a lot of cases, many more where Sakura is a good example, but like, oh, the goal for this arc is to like Sakura is one way beforehand, goes through this, and then she is another way afterwards, and then but that last part doesn't happen. So it's like characters end up really flat and they don't do anything, and then it's aggravating not because like in a different world where there was no characters were like more flat or three-dimensional but like static.
Yeah,
like,
static. I guess
static.
Is a better word.
Yeah. Static characters aren't necessarily wrong if that's the story you want to tell, and that's so far with Luffy's story. That's kind of the story that's been told up to this point. Luffy's a very static character, but that doesn't mean that he has no value as a character. He has a lot of value as a main character,
and he is three-dimensional, like you said. Yeah, I like because I was thinking like flat is not necessarily the right word because that's like if they were all like this is his one personality trait, but he is like all of the characters in One Piece are very well rounded and they all have like multiple things going on with them and with their outlooks and stuff like that. So I do like that. And I think with One Piece, because there are so many people in every time someone new gets introduced, that person goes through some sort of development one way or the other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and then it like does get revisited again and again and again, you know? And I think that's one of my favorite things. And in this arc we did, you know, we had some of that. And then we also had Vivi as like a side character, and we see her it's so interesting, her character, because first of all she was introduced as like just another dumb Baroque Works agent, but then once she became Vivi instead of Miss Wednesday, we see her go from like very anxious, she's always worrying, she's always like, oh, when are we gonna get here, oh, are you okay, oh, what's he doing, oh no, Luffy's taking off, oh, this and that, and then throughout the story at the end when everyone's leaving she's just so calm, and you can see that she has truly changed after being a part of the crew, and she will carry that with her for the rest of her life, and it's a very
so
like
earned,
subtle but so satisfying, and it feels so deserved, especially since they even address it in the show multiple times, like, Vivi, you need to calm down, it's okay, trust him, trust us, Vivi, I'm gonna punch you in the face if you don't stop taking it all onto yourself, you know? I love it.
Yeah. Somebody asked. There's so many comments, and I should have screenshotted them beforehand. But somebody asked specifically, like, what's a character that you didn't like at the beginning that you ended up liking? And I think a lot of people, like, that question I feel like is leading towards Mr. 2. Like, that's the point of the question. Or maybe Mr. 1 because he was really badass. Or, you know, there's a couple others.
Nico Robin.
Maybe Nico Robin.
Yeah.
But for me, it's absolutely Vivi.
Yeah.
1,000,000,000%. Like, the one character that, like, I did not give a fuck about that felt like just Nami with blue hair and long blue hair, but, you know, was basically just Kaya evolved. And especially once we got to Alabasta, to me felt like way less of a cookie cutter, like, girl character, Vivi. And she felt that way obviously because that's kind of what she was. Like, she was functionally like the impetus for the Alabasta arc. We needed some, like, people even said, Oda needed some girl character to be a princess, whether it was a new girl character or, oh, there's this pretty, you know, girl here, put her hair down, she has a secret backstory, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's just, let's get started. And then the real princess is a character in Alabasta. Like, that's where the development happens. That's where the real stuff happens. On the way to Alabasta, there was a lot, like, mixed in there, and there was a lot. But what I'm saying is, like, as we went along, at the beginning, it's like Vivi's just kind of copy paste, cookie cutter, whatever. But by the end of the arc, she feels like such a, like, an an irreplaceable part of One Piece to me. Like she went from literally fucking Jessie from Pokemon with blue hair and no personality and not even a good bond with Karoo, like very much like Jessie and does she have Ekans? Yeah, like literally just her Pokemon that's like, or Wobbuffet or Meowth, essentially just like, oh, you stupid fucking thing, hits Karoo. Like totally different vibe, totally different perspective. Everything beneath the surface was completely different. So when you gut it and you turn it to something else, the character, you just like, oh, this design, I'm gonna paste this design over this character that like is gonna do these other things. Of course, it's gonna feel kind of hollow and a little bit weird.
Well, I think.
But then, as like again, all that saying, by the time we get to the end, I need to say this because I feel like if I don't complete the thought, people are just gonna get pissed off after I kind of dog on the show like that. But like, the journey there is a feat of writing because like. I as critical as I am, knowing all of that, even if people didn't say it, it's clear from the show, the way Vivi's introduced. To go from that little, like, you know, very little investment on my part to Vivi's like one of my favorite characters in the show and like had so much going on. Also the voice acting, the whole performance was so great. That's like, that really needs to be noted and respected. Like that journey is so good. So that's my answer to like, who did you not like and then who did you like? It's a huge switch for me. Complete 180.
I was just gonna add, like, when they're on the boat going to Alabasta, I feel like it makes perfect sense as well. Like even after she like becomes a character and is more established, she can't do anything. She's completely out of her element. You know, she's not a pirate. She's not like sailing around. Like she's gone on missions for Baroque Works and whatever. But she's so out of her element and just is like waiting to like get back to the place that she can do something. And then she like gets back and tries to do stuff. You know what I mean? Like, and I feel like it was a good balance of her needing help and knowing that she needs help, but also being able to stand up for herself, and like take action when she is put in that position. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like she wasn't like the craziest fighter of all time, but she had like her own techniques and weapons and stuff that she was able to use to varying degrees of success depending on the situation. But it was clear that she was competent in her own abilities. You know what I mean? Like she could like whip her like knife belts and like little things around. Like she was really good at it. She was just kept coming up against opponents like Crocodile. Like he's not going to get taken out by pretty much anyone. Like it took so much, you know what I mean? So I feel like they did a good job of making Vivi like strong, even though she wasn't like the strongest person out there, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is actually a good one. From David Butt. I've got several questions. Choose whichever one interests you most. The one that I was interested in is the first one. When do you think Oda realized the story he wanted to tell with this arc? I'm interested to hear what you think. Like we talk about, like when did it kind of solidify? And
I feel like there's like almost a couple of places. Like I feel like there's a few things because very obviously it starts off so different with a Laboon and you know them getting into the Grand Line, and then when they go to Whiskey Peak, and like the whole like Cactus Island thing, I feel like there was almost like this like weird like shuffling, or it was like a Rubik's Cube, and then it kind of like
locked into place.
Yeah, it was kind of like, oh, there it is. That, like I like that, because you know we go there and it's like all nice, and then we have like the crazy reveal where it's like, oh no, they poisoned everyone and they're gonna kill everyone and this and that, and then there's this crazy fight and like things are just coming in, and then we have like where Alabasta kind of starts with Vivi getting revealed to be the princess, and this like whole thing of like, oh no, we need to get you out of here because you know this and that and the other thing. It's just, it like kind of, it obviously starts there, but I feel like, and I do think that he had an idea, but I feel like he did kind of the same thing that he did a lot in the East Blue of like almost like testing things out It's like he like writes his first draft as just like a different island, and then like completes it elsewhere. Like, because it also feels like Drum Island was almost like a like not necessarily like a. It's they're not really that similar, but I feel like there were some elements there that like expanded the world and fully like that's where I feel like what was going to happen in Alabasta probably didn't change too much after Drum Island, but I feel like before that it could have gone in multiple different directions, if that makes sense.
For me, I think that the way Alabasta went and I feel like the specifics of each set piece and each moment, like Vivi trying to stop the cavalry, the nuke going off, I feel like there's a couple moments that maybe he had rolling around in his head for a long time. I feel like generally the whole arc might have been a goal that he probably had from the very beginning. Like, I feel like the thing with Crocodile, with the water, with this revolution, I feel like he had been toying with that idea since the very beginning. And as far as like Pluton, whatever the fuck that even is, this like big weapon thing or whatever, I think that maybe he thought of that along the way. Maybe he had that, like, I'm saying maybe, like, I actually don't know. Like, maybe that's one of the goals he had at the beginning of the story to introduce this thing. It smells to me like, especially with people in Patreon comments talking about like the warlord plan, how the 7 warlords were going to be like the final bosses of One Piece, and then the story was going to be much shorter. And then I think around Whiskey Peak, around the time we got into the Grand Line, there was some reshuffling or like some like, oh, maybe this is going to be a lot longer. Maybe I can think maybe this can go further than I thought. Let's shuffle things around and then like turn it into a much longer story. We don't have to be bound by this original draft of the whole overarching story. But I think like Alabasta as an arc and Crocodile stealing the water in this desert and stuff like that to me feels like, generally speaking, that was a very early, like maybe early on, maybe it was a plan for even a different story before he started writing One Piece. Like that's it seems like a concept he had for a long time. But like little things in the arc of Crocodile's devil fruit power, how it works specifically, I think it feels like it didn't get fully like solidified until it needed to be solidified. It seems like there's a lot of foreshadowing, and there's a lot of stuff in many series, in many long running series. It's like, people have talked. I don't know what Blackbeard looks like, but people have talked. In Drum Island when we saw the flashback of like Blackbeard and his crew, and it's these silhouettes. Really, none of the characters look like that as they turn out, which is normal. Because it's just about setting expectations, introducing things early. If you look at Sage of the Six Paths of Naruto, Sage of the Six Paths does not look like the Sage of the Six Paths in the the silhouettes that we saw of him early on. And the way that he's described is not how shit works at all in the later parts of the arc. And that's just Naruto. It's true in many different arcs. But what I'm trying to say is with Alabasta, it's a very interesting case where it's not actually that interesting. I feel like there was more because it was a slightly bigger arc and a bigger piece of the pie. I feel like there was more in it that, like, again, moments that Oda wanted to write, and those moments, like everything in between those moments, is like where he does the little shuffling around and like, okay, this will go here, this will go here, and then if we stack things, okay, then we can go here. But I feel like the real turning point moment that it went from like. I feel like when the story like fully solidified, as if it wasn't building the whole time, which it was. It feels like when Luffy punched Vivi in the face, that's when, like, because they literally say it like that. That's a literal like, okay, this is what, like, we've been approaching this arc all wrong, or not wrong, but like we've been doing this the wrong way. Why don't we just go there? Like, okay. All this stuff, all this build up for the society and all the gathering of weapons and all the powder and the water and the blah, 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 and all this place got destroyed and that place got destroyed and Crocodile's over here and the maps, all, like it all was just like, okay, let's just go, like that, and then that to me, it feels like Oda at that point was like, okay, the stage is completely set. Let's make it happen. And if there was a point where I'd say it was like almost completely like, this is what the arc is, this is what it's going to be for the rest of the time. Not that planning always necessarily matters, but like that to me smells like where it reached like 100% transfer, or but for a long time before, possibly even before One Piece was fully written, he probably had a lot of those ideas rolling around in his head for sure.
Yeah, it's that's what it seems like to me as well. It seems like I don't know, sometimes people get mad when we're like, oh, it's like he just made up this as he went along, and then there, as if that's
exclusive to Oda,
no, as if that's not just how stories work, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's how writing
is. As if what am I trying to say? As if that's an insult.
Yeah.
When we say, oh, this seems like he just got an idea and went with it, and then people take that as like, no, he plans everything. How dare you say he just made this up on the fly? And it's like, either way, he's writing the story. He's coming up. It's at some point, every single thing that ever happened in this story was just an idea that popped into his head.
Any story.
In any story, literally ever. So, but I do think that in this one, we're like getting a little bit more of a sense of like, oh, I can see when he like possibly took an alternate route, or he like saw something that inspired him and expanded upon it further than maybe he originally did, or like he drew someone and was like with the Vivi thing, like we suspected that like that was kind of the case before, and then people did tell us later that he said in an interview or something that he drew her in a certain way and then thought she looked like a princess, and then like it was inspired. But I do sense a lot more in this one, like moments that I can feel like he was building towards. Like he had some kind of structure of like, I know I want like this moment. I imagine the like Vivi like standing like below the stairs. I'm like, I feel like very early on in his conception, or possibly even separate from the story, like you said, like that is like an image that was probably in his mind that's like, I'm like building the story and it's having this moment, like this is a moment that matters to me, or like the bomb thing, which is honestly like it's kind of interesting. I thought about this, but I don't think we talked about it. It's like that, like the bomb thing is almost like an evolution of the buggy bomb thing, where it's like, oh, we're going to blow up the city in this many seconds or whatever. But it's like the evolved, grander, way higher stakes version of that. And I feel like there's so much, just like moments that I can tell like were very much plan.
Yeah. Well, that's why I use the word goals. Mm-hmm. It's like, it feels like those moments were like goals for the arc and for this part of the story. Like also with Luffy getting stabbed and like dying. Mm-hmm. I think that was like that's like a beat that Oda was going to and didn't know every step
Luffy,
along the way,
using
but knew
his blood to be able to punch Crocodile. It's like that was so cool.
Yeah,
I loved that.
Yeah, and I think another thing is Zoro fighting Mr. One. I feel like that fight, whether it was going to be Mr. One in that role or not, I feel like the way that fight went on,
Zoro having that moment,
that revelation, I feel like that was another goal for this arc. Leveling up Nami in some way, I feel like was a goal for the arc. It was like giving her the climate act. I feel like that, was not exactly knowing what that was going to be 100 episodes ago or 200 chapters ago, and not knowing exactly how that was going to play out, but knowing that, this needs to happen for Nami as a character to grow, for Zoro as a character to grow, for, whoever. And maybe a couple other moments here or there that I'm forgetting. So I don't forget where we were going with that. Oh, it was just about like when the question was like, when do you think it kind of solidified? And I think that in this arc, I think this is why I was kind of trying to say it was a special case, is because it feels like a lot more in this arc it's not about like, oh, planning or not planning. It's like everything is a process. Everything has like an evolution to it. But it feels to me like there's less of those moments that happened in previous arcs where it's like, oh no, the story is actually about this, and then it like dives deep into that. Like we talked about that with Chopper. It's like this whole thing with all the doctors, like all of that was just kind of a way to introduce a doctor onto the crew. Like that's like the overall goal of the arc was to introduce a doctor onto the crew because that's what they need.
And it would be like these moments where...
But all the stuff like before that and with Wapol ended up being less important once we got Chopper's backstory and the catharsis of Dr. Hiruluke's death and stuff like that. Like, that was the moment that was like, okay, this is what the whole thing was about. And then the rest of the arc is just kind of blah. So there's less moments like that in Alabasta, I feel like, is my point.
It felt like, I felt like throughout the story, it's like, the story is like going and it's like good like the whole time, but there's like moments where you feel like he's just like in his groove.
Yes.
And like, whoa, the story is coming together. The story is flying together right now.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Everything
it's on
just
fire.
works together.
But it felt like in the Alabasta arc, like once we got there, it's like everything was building towards certain moments, and it didn't feel like, oh, sometimes we're like really in the story and then sometimes we're kind of out of the story. Like, there were slower moments, but it was all like in line. Like, it was all
fluid.
It was all building towards the same thing and telling the same story.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, we have like, it wasn't so much like what you were saying before of like, okay, we have to like deal with Wapol and just deal with him because he's like here, even though like the point of the story is Chopper. It's like all of the villains and all of the fights and all of everyone's journeys was all like wrapped up within every aspect of Alabasta. The Marines, like everything.
Yeah.
Everything was very much integrated into
cohesive.
one cohesive story instead of like, oh, we have like this one thing over here that we really care about, and then we have to like fight these guys so that we can resolve this thing, you know?
Yeah. So yeah, Alabasta, like once again, is just like at least twice as good in my opinion as everything came for, and it'll be difficult to top, but I'm sure they will. Oh, how do you think Crocodile compares to Mihawk, the only other warlord you have seen up to this point in terms of character design and strength?
This is an interesting question, actually, because...
Oh, that question is from Hoyd.
It's a kind of an interesting question because they're both very, very different. Mihawk... It's interesting because Mihawk seems like kind of reserved in a way, but also his style is so strong. Like, his aesthetic is unmatched.
We didn't see Crocodile cut multiple boats in half.
We didn't.
Without even looking at them.
But at the same time, Crocodile's abilities are different. Mihawk, in a way, is like more of like a pirate. Like what Ace was saying, it's like, oh, this is unusual that a pirate would want to settle down here and like play the long game of this place, even if his goal is to get a weapon. It's still very different because Mihawk seems like the kind of guy who wants to like go from place to place. Like, he doesn't want to be trapped in one place for too long, even if it's for a goal of some kind. You know what I mean? Like, he seems more like a journey kind of guy, whereas Crocodile, like, he's calculated, he has plans within plans, he has all of these people to do his dirty work for him, whereas Mihawk literally has like a boat that can only fit him. He's by himself, a total lone wolf guy.
Sigma male.
Crocodile has like a multi-level marketing pyramid scheme. He literally lives in a pyramid, and like thrives on having these people beneath him that will do things for him and are loyal to him. And obviously their powers are very different, because Mihawk just has an epic sword and is a fantastic swordsman. Possibly he can do other stuff. We have no idea. He didn't even need to, because like one swipe of his sword is unreal. But Crocodile has the sand devil fruit power, where he can suck liquid out of stuff and also turn into sand and like throw sand around. So I feel like they're very like it's hard to even compare them almost because they're so different, What do you think?
Yeah, they serve different purposes in the story that they're telling, that's being told at the time. Mihawk is a theming device when he's introduced to set up Zoro's power ceiling. Like he will eventually, the idea is, become strong enough to challenge Mihawk, meaning he will become as strong as Mihawk eventually. That's why Mihawk fights him, shows him how badass he is, leaves him alive, and then gives him an example to kind of follow that he can strive towards the end. That's the purpose of Mihawk at that time. And that's why he feels even less like a pirate, like a capital P pirate to me. He feels like a spirit. He feels like a holy spirit, which is kind of what he is. He's like this, the thing, the ideal that Zoro kind of will strive for as far as a combatant going forward, and an example not just for Zoro but for everybody of just how powerful people can be in later down the line as sort of an endpoint, something to strive for. Whereas Crocodile is somebody that we're supposed to defeat. So they serve different purposes in the story. I think that's why Mihawk seems so much more imposing. It's not just because we were so much weaker. We weren't that much weaker at the time where Mihawk came around. Like we haven't gone Super Saiyan. We haven't fucking, learned some like we haven't got like a super powerful weapon that's just like insane. Like we got the climb attacked, but like, Usopp just whipped that up in a few weeks, I guess. I was going to say in the afternoon, but that's not fair. My point is, it's not that we were so much weaker and that's why Mihawk seems so much stronger. Mihawk is still, if comparing to what he did there and what we can do now, it's basically the same thing. And that's why it feels like so different, is because the reason they were introduced respectively was different between Crocodile and Mihawk. So, adding on to that, as far as design, I really love Mihawk's design. He's badass. It feels like he was sort of he ran or he walked so Ace could run type thing. Like they have very similar sort of design philosophies, but also I would have expected to see someone like Crocodile earlier. This like guy with a big coat. He's got a hook hand. He's got a scar on his face. Very deep voice, big imposing figure. A devil fruit that rivals Luffy's in terms of like general strength and ability and stuff like that. Rivals as in like it's a way stronger, it can do a lot more because he's way more trained, he's way more advanced. He's more of like a Mihawk figure to Luffy in a way. Not really. I guess that's not quite true, but like more of a direct sort of challenge and to Luffy as a devil fruit user.
Luffy like, oh, I'm so good because I have like trained and like learned how to do different things with my ability. Yeah. And here you are just punching stuff.
Yeah. So like, I guess that kind of wraps it up. It's just that Crocodile would have expected to see him earlier than Mihawk, because Mihawk seems like his design reflects like the fact that he's like got the cross and he's the Holy Spirit of Zoro, sort of this like theming type thing. But they just serve different purposes. So of course they feel like they're differently powered or whatever. I feel like if Crocodile was used to a similar effect of Mihawk, he would be as powerful as Mihawk or give off that impression.
We also were in a position, like when Mihawk was there, he was just chilling.
Yeah.
And Zoro was like, I'm going to fight you. And he was like, fine, I'll fight you. But Crocodile was doing his own thing. And the crew was like, we're going to take this guy down. And we're all going to work together. And it is like priority number one that we get him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like no one else even tried to fight Mihawk because that wasn't the point. And he wasn't doing anything that would make them want to fight him either, you know? So it's just different because like Luffy really gains a power up the more mad he gets at the villain.
Big time. Lion's Tooth asks, additional question, what would you like to see from the live adaptation of this? What can be improved? What do you want to see, etc.?
I feel like this is kind of interesting because I don't know. I feel like most of this we probably won't see till like a season 3, honestly, because we didn't get Logue Town at the end of season 1. So I feel like we might get like this thing of like Logue Town, Laboon, like Uptel Drum Island kind of.
I think we'll probably get to the end of Chopper.
Yeah, well, I feel like Chopper joining the crew might be the finale climactic moment, similar to how they picked Arlong and Nami to be the climactic end moment of season 1. I feel like definitely things that can be improved are, just some of the fights and the Baroque Works villains of just making them shorter and more impactful. And, I feel like we probably could cut out, the giant wax candle spinning thing.
I don't want them to cut it out. I just want them to make it better.
Like cut it out, but like it was so long. So like a shorter, more dramatic, where we're actually like a little bit fearful for the characters. And I guess what would be ideal, and what it seems like they did for the live action in the first place, is just make all of that stuff shorter and more intense. Like, think about the Kuro thing in the live action was very a different vibe, but I feel honestly like more effective. We did cut out Django, which honestly is a bit of a loss. But I feel like I have faith that they will cut out the right things, because after watching like the both for the first part, I feel like the live action was kind of its own thing, and the things that were missing from it just made the version of One Piece that it's trying to encapsulate stronger, if that makes sense. So I also feel like we might get kind of a different vibe in the introduction of Vivi as Miss Wednesday, and how all that comes together. I feel like we will probably, I'm hoping that it will be like similar, but possibly just more in line with like how she comes across at the end, like not necessarily like making it super obvious,
just more signposting.
Yeah, just a little bit more. I just want to see kind of her as a character and her goals that she has reflected in her actions earlier on, if that makes sense. And it's obvious why that wasn't in the anime and the manga, because that wasn't her character's intention at that time. Yeah. So it makes sense why it's like this.
But again, with many things in the live action, they're clearly informed by a lot of stuff we haven't even seen yet, like a lot of mentions of characters, or a lot of, a bunch of foreshadowings and relations to things that we have no context for, even at a point we're at now.
I'm so excited to see Smoker in the live action.
Big time. They teased him at the end, at the end of the credits of the last episode, if you remember. Yeah.
I feel like that's going to be so cool.
That's going to be so sick.
I can't wait for it. I'm honestly so excited, because I feel like after watching the anime version of what we saw, it just makes me more excited to see them adapt the rest of it. I'm a little bit concerned, but nothing really is that much different, if that makes sense. So I feel like season 2 is going to be maybe up till Drum Island, and then we'll get like a season 3 full on Alabasta thing, so they can give it, because I feel like it's the kind of thing that there's not really a lot to cut out. Like, there's not a lot to cut that down. Yeah. It's like that in itself is like a full season of television.
Alabasta, if they dedicated 5 to 6 episodes just for Alabasta and did it like went hard, I feel like you could do it shorter. Like, I feel like you could do the Alabasta arc in a movie, like a full feature length movie. But I feel like to get all the nuance, all this stuff going on, there's a lot of things that could be shortened or just streamlined, where it could have worked. It could have gone, a little bit better. But like, I think it needs a good amount of time. I feel like just an 8 or 9 episode season is not enough for all of those episodes from Laboon to end of Alabasta.
I feel like part of Alabasta, like, being like, first of all, taking a long time to get there. Second of all, taking a long time to like traverse the desert and actually figure out and get to the bottom of what is happening in this country, and trying to get ahead of it, and then trying to like stop it. There's a lot of things of like, okay, we need to like get there before this happens, and then it's like, okay, now it's too late, now we have to try and stop it before it like gets farther. Okay, now it's like full on. Okay, now we have to stop this bomb from going on. Like, what I mean? Or like there's like so many moments where it's like, this is the plan. Oh shit, the plan didn't work. Now we need to reassess and like do the next best plan to like limit the loss of lives. And I feel like it being long really sells that like this battle is being
It's a struggle,
waged,
yeah.
and it is a struggle,
And it's
they-
multi-leveled,
and they
like-
didn't figure it out within like oh, people started fighting and then they immediately saved the day. It was like, and the fact that it was even like in half an hour this bomb is going to go off. It's like in a full scale like warfare, half an hour is a long time. You know what I mean? Like it's like, and it also shows the scale of it. It's like people are fighting their way through this city and like getting up to the palace and stuff. So I don't know. I feel like they could shorten it, but as long as they do it really, like they do have to be, I think, a little bit more selective if they are going to try and do everything from Logue Town to the end of Alabasta in one 8-episode season.
I don't think they can do that.
I feel like
That's
it would
way
be
too
so
much.
difficult.
You'd have to cut out like all of Little Garden. You'd have to cut out most of Whiskey Peak. Probably a lot of Drum Kingdom as well. Like you wouldn't have enough time to sell. Like imagine if they gave Chopper the Usopp treatment, like how they really shortened down Usopp's effect on the whole fucking first season.
Like that's not a good idea, especially considering Chopper has like that's such a highlight.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that they like
and high budget, because like how are they gonna do Chopper? How are they gonna do that whole island? Like, and so much of the as it's gone on, there's way more like otherworldly stuff going on, which doesn't make sense for the Grand Line. But like Laboon is going to be a huge VFX budget.
I'm like,
the Elbaf Warriors is going to be huge. All the dinosaurs huge. I mean, if they'll either have to like really choose their VFX shots and like be really careful with their budget, but like they need a huge budget for this. Mm-hmm. There's no way that they can.
I mean, I'm hoping, because like as far as I know, the live action was very successful.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that that they have the confidence in it to give it the budget that it needs to properly achieve all of the moments that they want to hit.
Yeah.
And then they will get. I'm certain that if they do that, then they will get the returning. They will get rewarded for that, and it will be popular. Because I think a lot of times what we see is shows being adapted where the people in charge do not have the confidence to give it the treatment that it deserves, and then it performs poorly, and then I feel like they get a
confirmation bias.
The executives or producers or whatever are like, yeah, see, we knew that this wasn't going to do too good, so now we'll stop.
It's about what we expected, blah blah blah.
And it's like, yeah, well, you guys didn't go above and beyond, so why would you expect the response to be above and beyond? But I feel like given how the first season was handled, it gives me a lot of hope that like clearly people care about it.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that they continue to care about it and focus on the things that are important.
I agree. Yeah. And the thing is, it's all up to the executives whether they want to fund it, because like if they give it what it, oh, sorry, I thought it was stop recording. If they give it what it needs, I feel like it could do what it has to do. Because it has, unlike a lot, like if we think about like The Witcher, or if we think of, other Netflix series that, I guess Witcher went on a little bit longer, so it's not a great example, but like a lot of Netflix series get canceled after the first or second season because there's not a lot of interest. But this is a global series. Like One Piece has global appeal, unlike anything else Netflix has, unlike anything else that's really going on. If you want to hit the Chinese, Japanese, and American and European markets, like everywhere in the world, loves One Piece, and it's especially like they really you really capitalize on, the Eastern market is huge, and Hollywood's always trying to capitalize on that without while still being able to maintain their domestic audience. So like this is the perfect opportunity to do that, but they need to fund it properly, because we've seen what they can do with the team that's doing it really has a good handle on the series. And One Piece as a brand right now is like it has like a huge push. There's live action. The anime is popping off right now. Like the anime we're watching, the current episodes I haven't seen. I've been trying my best to stay away from it, but it's really difficult because it's like everywhere. It's huge right now, and because the production value is insane. Too? And then the Wit Studio is redoing. Yeah,
so it's like there's never been a better time for One Piece.
It's I think there must be some kind of brand, like some new marketing head or some other internal change happen that like, okay, we can
for this.
Well, they're just making a push for it. Like there's the manga, everybody's always excited about the manga, but yeah, the anime currently is like super high production value, and 2 more adaptations in the works, and like there's an effort right now to make One Piece as big as it can be and like make it as global and as expansive and big as it can be. And I feel like the live action has every reason for it, the executives or all the share, wherever they get all of their funding. I don't actually know all the specifics of the budgeting or anything about the One Piece live action, but like if they need to give them all the money that they need and it will pay off. I'm pretty sure, because like nobody's gonna, like, this isn't the kind of series where people are gonna lose steam after like 1 or 2 seasons.
Yeah,
like this is some people are going to expect 20 seasons of this show. And I know it slows down at some point, but like think about it. It's 8 episode seasons every 2 years. That's that's way too long, because like actors age, people age, the people get promoted. People who are working on the show in this position get promoted or offered a job on another show, and now that personality is now not influencing the production that you have, and that is now replaced by somebody else who's giving a completely different energy. Everybody works differently. The planning process goes differently. Not just talking about the directors, but like different production staff. It's all the people involved in it. It's a collaborative process, and like I don't how's the story gonna go if Luffy. If like 12 years from now, the actor that plays, like, maybe people die, maybe one of the actors will fucking die. You don't know. Like, it's just, I guess I'm just really excited for the live action, how it will handle all of this. I really hope that Pell stays dead. I bet he will. Somebody in the comments actually said that they think so as well, because Mary is dead in the live action.
Yeah.
I feel like that's an easy one. I feel like maybe Ingram as well might stay dead, because he doesn't play a huge part other than at the very end saying,
but then
like,
again,
coming
it's
back
like the
and
whole
kind of
Nico
calming
Robin
everybody.
thing of like, if she killed him, then that would be maybe a step too far.
Yeah, maybe Ingram will stay alive, but anyway, I'm really excited for it. I'm really excited for the live action. I don't know what exactly they're going to do. I feel like a lot of the changes might be welcome, because there's a lot of like weirdness and like kind of unnecessary bits in those initial islands. But I really hope that they don't take a step too far and cut out too much, because I feel like a lot of the changes they made to like the Usopp story, like, and Kai and everything, turning it from this big, like, the battle that I think that is sort of the seedling of what would go on in Alabasta, this like big battle with all these different pirates and all these different personalities, and the 2 cat dudes or whatever, and like all this shit, and like big power-ups and all this crazy stuff. That's kind of like an ambition of Oda at that point with is it Syrup Village? Is that Kaya's place? I thought it was.
I think so.
Yeah. And but I really liked how the live action changed to like from a big battle to like a monster movie.
Yeah.
Like
I feel like
I thought that was a
wish
great
that we
change.
did get a little bit more of Usopp as a character, but I think like toning that down and like
it made him way more imposing.
It made him terrifying,
and it made sense. It fit a little. I feel like it fit a lot more with my idea of him, that he was sort of downtrodden. Kuro, that he had like been defeated or has been in hiding, therefore doesn't have all of his pirate crew like offshore this whole time. Like it makes sense that if he's in hiding, he has like his 2 top lieutenants, and they're like trying to make shit happen for themselves. So there's a lot that works, and it's small changes that don't actually really change the character, but just kind of fit better with the story that's being told there. And I feel like those kind of changes, you can go way too far with them, and I just hope that they don't go too far with them in these initial islands in the Grand Line, because there are definitely some things that could be streamlined for sure, like you said with Vivi's introduction and characterization initially. That's an easy thing, but you don't want to go too far with it where you cut out like all of the fun out of it, and that's a lot of people's criticism of the live actions, that they cut out like the funniness and the fun of it and made it really approachable and serious and everything, and it works when it works, but there's a lot that is lost, and it's a different adaptation, so you take it for what it's worth, and if you don't like some things, that's okay, because you still have the manga and you still have the anime. So yeah, I don't know, I'm really excited to see where the live action goes. My one hope with the live action above anything is that they do it well, but they also do it on a tighter timeline, for the reasons that I said, because people die, people get promoted, people retire.
It is possible that if they put out the next season and people like, because I don't know. I saw someone, I don't know, maybe on TikTok or on YouTube or somewhere, I don't know who, talking about it recently about how like TV shows, like you used to be like like as soon as like when the first season would be going up, you'd already be like working on or like finishing up the next season. Like you wouldn't wait to see how the first season does before you start production.
The production's constantly rolling.
Because you have faith in your product, you are making it to have
where there's just
more
so much
seasons.
less competition.
Yeah. But I guess what I'm hoping is like if the season 2 comes out and if it does really well, then maybe they could tighten up the schedule, because it's like you know, like you don't need, like, did Game of Thrones come out every year or every 2 years for that one?
I think it was every like year and a half. Like there were some years, some seasons took a 2-year break, but I think generally they would do it once a year.
I
at least
guess
at the
it just
beginning.
Depends on, like, if you're
remember.
very confident that it will keep going, then you can start sooner. But if you're like, oh, let's see if it pans out or not before we throw like millions of dollars into it.
Yeah, it was 8 seasons, and they started in 2010 or 2009, 2010, and then they finished in 2018.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was once a year, and that was like the biggest show ever.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they could do it. It's, again, like even Game of Thrones, the budget, like it will need, eventually it'll need like almost Rings of Power level, I imagine. Like even just now, it's so insane the amount of VFX that'll have to happen in the Grand Line, and I can only imagine how much more fucking like I've seen characters that occur later, and I'm just like, that's not a fucking human. Like, how's that a person? But it's just like, oh, characters just look like this, I guess, in One Piece later on, which is fine. It's just from an adaptation perspective, it'll be very difficult. But I'm really excited. I'm really excited even for the Wit Studio thing to come out. We didn't talk about that really at all so far on the channel, but I'm really excited for that. Wit Studio is probably my favorite.
Of One Piece
I mean, I'm glad we made the channel. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, we got the live action. We got 3 different adaptations. We're going to be probably reacting to cover stories maybe. And like, it's just, there's just so, like, I'm so glad we made the channel, because there's just so much going on with this series.
Like, podcasts, and then we're gonna be then we're gonna have to like make a podcast reviewing the like Wit Studio version, and then a podcast comparing all 3 versions of like the same thing. Like, it's so much. And
there's a lot to do with One Piece, you know, like even like it was a viable strategy to make a new channel, even if it's just the anime. But the fact that there's all this going on, it's like it's really exciting, and it's I'm so excited for the Wit Studio thing.
It, because like that's the one thing.
That's why we didn't start it for so long.
Because we were like, what if we start One Piece and then we just hate it? And then we've like ruined our lives forever.
Yeah, because you can't start One Piece and then stop One Piece. Like, you can't. Like, especially if we did it on our main channel. Imagine if we started One Piece on our main channel, got to the end of the East Blue, and we're just like, this is not as good as people said. Everyone said to wait till this blah 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 episode, and then you'd be hooked. We weren't really hooked, and now, you know, we fucking hate this show. But like, but we had we were in the right headspace, and obviously we watched the live action, and we could see that there was a lot of like, especially in the live action, the way they like tease things that happens that we haven't even seen yet at this point in the anime. Like, there's a lot of potential in the series, and you don't, if we were approaching it with this lens, like without the sort of take it as it comes kind of vibe, you know, if we were being we could go way harder and be super negative all the time, which we aren't. A lot of people think we are. We're not even being that negative most of the time. Pretty much all the time. We really like fun. We're really just trying to have fun and just take things as they come. And, you know, if we started it earlier, even if we made a channel, if we just did it on our current channel, like after Naruto ended,
if we were like
we would be
watching it
fucked.
Around Boruto,
I'm so glad we waited, because like it's like, seriously, after Alabasta right now, it's like this show's just fucking good. Like, it's just really a good watch and just fun, and it's just. And I like that as we've gone on, just like checking in with the channel, kind of, I like as we've gone on, and as, you know, we've continued, people have kind of gotten used to our style a lot more. And I think it's partly because we're kind of taking a step back a little bit more. We aren't being as harsh as we were, or as with like Naruto. Like, I think like not I think honestly, a lot of this is actually a better start for what it is than the start of Naruto, for one. But like,
and also just the place that we're at with our channel and like comfortability on camera, because I was not comfortable on camera during Naruto, but you'd already seen it, so it was this very like thing where it's like just kind of awkward.
yeah,
but I feel like
we really
with
started at
One
the right
Piece,
time.
I've just been enjoying it, and like and I think also what a lot of people maybe are not used to, like, I don't know, we got some shit on this channel, a bunch of like, I think people that are just not used to people critiquing something that they're genuinely enjoying.
Yeah.
Like, I can love something and then still critique the same story.
Yeah.
Like, we're not like ripping it to shreds, but if something's bothering us, then, you know, we can talk about it, but that it doesn't, for us. And I think, yeah, you're right. People are getting used to the fact and like understanding that just because, like, for if someone else was to be like, oh, I didn't like this, then for them that might ruin the entire experience.
Yeah.
But for us, it doesn't. And I will love something even more if I talk about the reasons why I didn't like this certain aspect of it.
Yeah.
It makes me appreciate the things that I do like, and when things are working well, then I like it more. When I look at like, oh, I wasn't enjoying this, why didn't I enjoy it? Instead of like, I didn't like that.
Yeah.
And I'm going to move on and just know I didn't like it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like people get a lot of it is people get worried because they're like, why am I even watching this reaction if all they talk about is stuff that they don't like? But it's more that like it's not as interesting all the time to just like say, oh, that was so good. Oh, I love this so much. All right, see you guys next week. It's like I feel like there's a lot more to talk about and it's a lot more interesting when you enjoy something and there's something about it that's like off, you know, like explaining why that is. I feel like is a lot more entertaining to me personally. That's why we do it. But I don't know. We talk about this all the time, I guess. But, you know, I don't know. It's just the alternative is just, all right, oh, yeah, that was awesome, guys. See you next time. And then that's it. Or we could, you know, acknowledge. Like, I feel like you could probably tell when we like stuff. You know, we like a lot of different stuff. Sometimes we don't react as crazy as other times. But, like, you know, we enjoy the ride pretty much all the time. Like most of the time we're just having fun watching it and kind of joking around and just kind of taking it for what it is. And then, oh, this thing was kind of weird. But rather than just like, oh, guys, this scene that you like and you were excited for us to watch kind of sucks. Bye. But instead we could be like, I didn't like this. And maybe it's because it feels like it was kind of thrown in there just for this effect or this reason, maybe. Or maybe it was because of this or maybe because of that. I don't really know. All I know is it didn't really fit with this. And it didn't, you know, and I thought that they were going to go this kind of direction. That kind of would have made more sense, but it feels like they wanted to go in this direction. And I feel like that, you know, serves less of a purpose as far as this character or that thing or whatever. Like that kind of conversation I think is more interesting as far as content, and it's more interesting to talk about just for me personally, and I think for both of us. So, you know, I don't know. I feel like that's. But what's good about the reason why we're talking about this isn't just to like, you know, talk about ourselves necessarily. It's just like it's just nice that people are starting to get it, and now that we're further into the series, people are. It feels like the channel is kind of found its footing, and like the people who know what we're about are here to stay. And the people who are not down for that and just want people to react how they wanted and don't really care what we have to say, they're kind of gone. And I'm kind of happy about it because I'd way rather have like slightly less viewership, but still like, you know, consistent and be able to say what I want and enjoy the show the way that I want, rather than fake my whole personality every day when I'm just trying to enjoy something that I like. And, you know, so I guess I just like where everything is, and the future's looking bright for the channel, and I'm just really excited for the show in general, not just like all the outside stuff, but like the story as it's going forward. I feel like it's just gonna only get better and better.
Yeah.
Like in every way, the animation's gonna get better, the art quality. I'm excited for eventually when we turn to HD. Although I've seen character designs later. I actually saw Chopper's design later. I forget how, but I saw it and I was just like, aw, it's just kind of not as
Different.
nice.
Oh.
He just kind of looks different. And yeah, I don't know what the deal with the change was, but I saw that he just looks very different than he did. And that kind of makes me sad. But then there's a couple things that are different. That seems
Can't
seem
wait
pretty
to
cool.
see Nami's boobs just
Balloon right up, yep.
get way even bigger.
Waist gets smaller.
She's like a toothpick.
Yeah, I don't know. Just there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of good stuff coming, I guess, with the show and with the channel and everything. It's very exciting. Anything else you want to say?
I don't know. Was there any other questions or any other?
Is there anything else you want to say?
I guess not really. I don't know.
I feel like we're leaving a lot out.
I know, but it was so long, and I do feel like we did a lot to discuss like after each, episode and stuff.
I feel like we kind of covered. A lot of people are just like, it's a lot of like, there's some leading questions, but it's a lot of people that are just kind of generally like, what do you think is going to happen? Like, because I feel like there's a lot of that will happen that we will not expect.
Yeah.
And that like we can't really expect. And so if people ask like a too leading of a question, then it's kind of a spoiler. So like a lot of the questions are just like, what do you think? Like some people are asking like, what do you think about this fight or that fight? Or what do you think about this character, their place in the story? Like we talked about Ace. I think he's going to have an interesting place in the story. I think we can kind of gather that without, thinking too much about what that means. It just seems like he's going to be kind of a big important part, being that he's Luffy's brother and has a really cool firepower and is a badass. And Nico Robin, we talked about her. We talked about Vivi, talked about everything. I think we covered pretty much everything that we need to cover. I feel like there's more we could say perhaps, but
we might just get rambly or start going in circles or something.
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of good things ahead, I guess. That's kind of the note I want to leave it on. It's really looking up, and I'm really happy to be doing this for you guys.
And I'm really glad that people on this channel seem to really like our podcasts.
Yeah, the podcasts get a lot of views. Sometimes it's usually like views wise, they're usually like a bad episode worth of views and interaction. But on this channel, it's like not a top tier thing, but like there's a lot of people are like excited about them, like and that's and people, it's kind of changing on the main channel too. But yeah.
I think it's just we didn't know what the reception was going to be, because on our main channel we've obviously been trying for like a long time to like
it's like constantly an uphill thing.
Where like, but we didn't start doing podcasts right away, so like and we've kind of struggled of like when to do them, when not to do them. Sometimes we like wait too long and then we don't have anything to say, and we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot a little bit on that front, and we're not as consistent with them. But what I like about this is like starting off right away, we've decided kind of the pace at which we're going to do them, and we could add more. Like if there was like people really, really wanted more, like
we could do them arc by arc if you want. Sure.
Like I wouldn't mind doing like more smaller podcasts or whatever. It's just nice to know that they're being appreciated and people are watching them and listening to what we have to say. Yeah,
big time. Well, my ear went all crazy there. Leave a like and subscribe, and stay tuned for the next arc. I don't know what it's going to be about.
It's completely open.
Yeah, we're on the seas, and whatever happens next will happen next. We haven't even seen the OP.
We have not. I'm excited. To hopefully see like some of Nico Robin being able to like add something and like her expertise in some level coming out and like kind of guiding them in a way, maybe. I don't know. I'm excited.
Alrighty, well, leave a like and subscribe. We'll see you guys in the next one. I'm Carson.
I'm Lindsay.